So grateful to be here and very happy to discuss these incredibly important and hard to talk about topics. He has an incredible backbone and staggering moral fiber. How he is totally committed, completely ethical, totally admirable. No pressure if you can hear this, but honestly, how he's a hero to me.
John, you joined us before, and it was pretty incredible kind of testimony you gave, and you devoted your life to advocacy for child trafficking, and even 9/11 truth. Maybe you could explain to us, in the last decade, what do you think the most challenging parts of coming alive on some of these issues have been?
Probably the hardest thing, and it continues, is just realizing that pretty much everything that I was told and taught since I was in grade school is probably not true.
Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to the Traffic Report.
Good evening, John, Howard, listening people.
Good evening, all. We got people already. Rosie's there, Kelly's in there, Darth Alba's there.
Yes, and I guess before we get started tonight, we should congratulate ourselves on I think fairly quickly achieving 1,000 subscribers.
Oh,
and, thank you.
I almost forgot. Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot because I didn't know until 5 minutes ago. He said, we just hit 1,000 subscribers, and that's big. That's actually, you may not know this, but I've been watching YouTube propaganda all day, and we're gonna get, and I'm gonna put our name on it. You get a little bronze play button that they send you when you get 1,000 subscribers, and the next one's silver, and the next one's. So hey, we got that going for us.
That's hilarious. A bronze button.
Yeah, we get a bronze. Oh shit, I could probably find that, but I'm just not in the mood. But it's important because the traction of the videos and the spread of the videos goes up exponentially when you hit 1,000 subscribers. There's a bunch of stuff that you're gonna be seeing in the videos, like that help to get them out there. So yeah, that's pretty important. So Pizzagate, how is in there? I love it when you guys go in the chat room. I don't know why that just.
Yeah, I try. Yeah, I have my computer set up because obviously, what we're going to be talking about tonight is just this. What am I hearing in the background? I feel like I'm hearing chickens. The scope of the Jimmy Saville case, if you want to call it a case, is just it's mind-boggling, and it's we probably don't focus as much attention because we're in the United States, but it's, to me, it's the greatest piece of evidence of fame. We can talk about Hollywood, but what Jimmy Saville, and it's hard to, I've tried to ask people, like, because obviously I wasn't there, how big Jimmy Saville was, like, and I don't know what you would compare him to, in the United States, but he was
Bob Hope, or Howard Stern.
Like a Howard Stern. I think he's bigger than a Howard Stern.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. Howard Stern hasn't been knighted.
Yeah, so right, and you get up to knighted, and you're meeting with the royal family. I mean, he rubbed shoulders with everybody. And I was just looking for whatever reason today, because obviously Barbara Bush died, and I was just looking to see if Jimmy Savile ever met her. And yeah, he did. There's a picture of Jimmy and Barbara Bush, like in the 1990s. But it's just
There he is. We're gonna. This is a great
scale of this case is, and even though they've investigated it, I don't think they've put, the as much time and effort into it as it deserves.
Absolutely not. And the fucker got to die, instead of go to jail, which.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like if you don't look, you're not going to find anything. They probably didn't look very hard.
Oh no.
Pretty much.
They had this case, and we're going to talk about some people that were on this case, and some very good police officers that were on this case, and they were every barrier of the state that could be thrown at these guys was, obviously, because the guys spent the night in Buckingham Palace. He was palling around with the royals. I mean, of course they were going. And this was when this started coming forward. This was years ago. This wasn't like it is now. It was a different time, different atmosphere, and we've got deaths. I mean, Jill Dando, for one, mysteriously shot right outside her home, and she was one of the major forces that was really pushing this to blow it wide open when the cops were hitting brick walls. So yeah, we'll talk about her some, but man, I've got a great timeline there. I'll go over some of that. I don't even want it. It's so depressing. I don't even want to start, but I guess we got to start somewhere. But yeah, I would totally agree with you. This is like I would say the most, to this point, the most highly placed individual that's been totally outed as a monster.
Right. And it connects, in different, because this was over the course of 50 years that he was doing this. It's absolutely connected to pedophile rings. It's not as though Jimmy Savile was doing this by himself. At times he did it by himself, but he was also part of rings that included other entertainers, politicians, the Prime Minister of England, Edward Heath being one of them, the Prime Minister from 1970 to 1974. So, for people to say that there's, a lot of, that this doesn't reach these high places, maybe, I'm sure a lot of people in the United States don't even know who Jimmy Savile is or was. But I'm pretty sure in England, everybody knows. Everybody knows.
Yeah, and the there he is. Hold on, I'll put him up there. But a prime minister. There hasn't been too many heads of state that have been accused to this. But yeah, and from what I heard about this case, and I haven't really delved into it, but yeah, he was there with Savile, and obviously all the upper echelon of British society. This guy, everybody knew that he was gay. If I'm a big Monty Python fan, and they were making fun of the guy, about being gay at that time. I'm sure they didn't know what was going on, but there's an individual. He was a young, I believe, a minor male that was disappeared, and what the investigators who again ran into brick walls suspected was that he was murdered on Heath's yacht, and probably more than just him. So what a cesspool of I hesitate to call them human beings. But let me just start. I guess we'll just start with this timeline. And we were talking a little bit about this before the show.
John, have you ever heard that Johnny Rotten got blackballed because
Yes.
he tried to out Saville?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a good catch. Yeah. And absolutely, those guys, I mean, they were I don't know how many punk fans there are, but they were for a punk band, they were a really good band. And they would have normally went, pretty far. But those guys, it was just like, I guess, the cops over there, that were trying to investigate this case. He was trying to come forward about it, and they shut them down so hard they could barely play, in a local venue. But yeah, that's true, Catherine. I actually did. So
for Johnny Lydon, he was around the scene, and I'm reading from a quote from him. Well, I had the quote. The band were already in the BBC's bad books before Lydon Saville comments. God Save the Queen received a total ban on radio play from the corporation in May 1977. Lydon didn't go into specifics on what the ban entailed, although he said, "Weren't I right? I think most kids wanted to go on top of the pops, but we all knew what that cigar muncher was up to." And he always did. Now, how did they know? If they knew, obviously others knew and looked the other way, because they were, for those of you that don't know, Top of the Pops was just a TV show, that played all the, hit records in England. And Jimmy Saville was the first presenter of that show. And I believe he did it for like
a huge show. That was like American Bandstand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So that would be like Dick Clark. And I'm not so sure about him, but yeah.
Where teenagers were sitting around, in the audience, and even and after the show, apparently they were plucking kids, taking them back to the dressing room and raping them, like that, that open, right on BBC property.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about one of those people, Mark Thompson, who's still sitting at the helm of the rag New York Times. But let me just start into some of this, and you can, I think people can see this as we go through it. But it's also in the all these articles are in the show notes if you want to share them and get them out. But so this, according to this article, Jimmy Saville sexually abused hundreds of children and women at the height of his fame. Yeah, and he was probably doing it before he was famous. So their number, again, they come up with that 500 vulnerable victims as young as 2 years old at institutions, including the British Broadcasting Corporation studios, 14 hospitals, and 20 children's hospitals across England. Okay, this piece of shit died in October of 2011. A string of official inquiries have been launched into his offending at hospital, schools, and the BBC. So, and none of these have really gone anywhere because, yeah, he's dead, but they easily could have prosecuted Mark Thompson. Maybe that's why he fled to the United States. Maybe they're going to do that. But these have really just went nowhere. And you've got all these survivors of this scumbag that's basically not got any justice because, we've talked about this before. That the people at BBC knew what he was doing. I bet you the royal family knew what he was doing, and everybody that he associated with, and nobody has been brought to justice over.
When we talk about these schools and hospitals, that why don't we talk about why Jimmy Saville had access to schools and hospitals? You know, it seems kind of strange. What was one of the most famous people in England doing at hospitals? And he actually volunteered at least 2 hospitals I know of. One, he had some type of title at the hospital where he had an office. He had his own building at the hospital.
Keys to the building. Yep.
He lived there.
Yeah. Yeah. And he had no qualifications whatsoever in the healthcare field, but he was like he volunteered as an orderly, and people thought that, oh, look at this wonderful, this wonderful man. He was doing it so he could rape the sick and infirmed. That's how demented he was. He was raping.
Yeah. And we were talking about this earlier, and who knows with these animals, but obviously a lot of these kids were profoundly retarded and basically non-communicative. God, I can't believe I got that word out. But so who are they going to complain to? I think that was part of what he was doing, but these type of personalities, as Missy has explained to us, the more, and Kinsey himself, we've, from our own research, the worse it was, the better they liked it.
Right. So he, and it was boys, girls. I mean, he just wanted to rape he just raped everything in his path. So, that number of 500, of 500 that they put out.
Maybe a month or a year. I don't know. But the other thing, and while you're on that, boys, girls, whatever, living and dead, there's this whole group that's, and we'll talk about, Bill Maloney and, what they found out with that group down there, that they were having sex with dead children, and burning them in the basement of a government-run foster care home in Guernsey. So, yeah. So let me get through this fucking timeline here, and it's actually a very good timeline. I'm just haven't been in a great mood all day, and I've been immersed in this stuff for a couple of days. But so at any rate, he's he's
not real pleasant stuff.
Huh?
It's not real pleasant stuff.
No. Well, and unfortunately, he was born on Halloween. That's appropriate. 1926, the youngest of 7 children. That must have been a hell of a family. His earliest incident of abuse recorded by the police was in 1955. Took place in Manchester, and he managed a dance hall. So, we can see with the serial pedophiles, and obviously he already was one, at a very young age. Where do they go? A dance hall, record stores, candy stores. That's where the kids are. So, so they got him on record in 55, 1960. In one of a handful of example cases given by the police, a 10-year-old boy asked Saville for his autograph outside a hotel. He took the boy inside and raped him. So, and think about that culture, how the culture was that could happen and jack shit would be done about it, So thank God our culture has changed somewhat, So here we go. So yeah, of course, when you're basically pulling kids off the street and raping them in hotels, he would get rewarded with a TV show at the British Broadcasting Corporation, Top of the Pops, 1964, which if you don't know, that was like American Bandstand in England, and he was a DJ. He started at the BBC, in 64. Record show abuse started at the BBC, Leeds General Infirmary, long-term volunteer porter, Stoke Manville Hospital, where he also volunteered. Okay. And they say his peak was in 1966. This is the police. 1970 records show Saville started to abuse girls at Duncroft's Girls' School near Staines, Surrey, where he was a regular visitor. Yeah, because these personalities, Joe Biden included, show up at schools. That's their public image, that they want to help kids. That they're interested in education and healthcare, and it's just a bunch of smoke screen.
Yeah, the documentary that I was watching, that Duncroft school, I mean, that should have set off like major red flags. Jimmy Saville, which it was a school for girls with severe emotional problems, that perhaps committed crimes, and Jimmy was showing up there to, supposedly to, improve their self-worth. And what he would do was he would actually take the girls off of school ground, put them in a car or whatever, and take them out and rape them. And that's actually one of the women that came forward in around the time of his death. She was one of the catalysts for getting the investigation started. So, as a school, as whoever's running the school is, oh, Jimmy Saville's coming, and then he's taking girls off the school grounds. You have no idea where they're going, what they're doing.
And
that's
not to change the point, but it totally reminded me of just how Biden is around kids. It's just like, well, here I am, and oh, big deal. He's coming. Joe Biden's coming. So, but yeah, I mean,
yeah, your proper approach. If you showed up at a school and you're a nobody, and you just say, hi, I'm an ex-fireman. I'm gonna take some kids in my car, and we're gonna go drive off into wherever. They'll be like, well, no, you're not. But because when you have, it's so much easier for people in positions of power and authority to do this, because nobody's going to question them. Nobody is going to question them.
Well, they also groom the people that they're dealing with. I was reading about that earlier also. And they do that. They groom the adults, they groom the children. They've got a whole, slick thing going on, and it's all about getting to the kids, and they know how to work it. They know how to work people. They know how to read the body language.
Yeah, we've got a great.
These girls at this Duncroft school, they were also promised, appearances on top of the pops. So
right.
That reminds.
Would you like?
Yeah. My pet pedophile who's crashed and burned, but that promising girls, oh, I'll help you with your music career, and then raping them in the woods, But we got a great question and really comments in the chat room. But why, how pervasive that is in Britain, and one of the reasons is because that's where this was all born. I mean, back in the 1500s, when British intelligence, was coming up with the City of London, which is it's the City of London, the Vatican, and Washington, D.C. Those are the seats of this type of behavior in the world. And the City of London is, one of the forefronts, and the Vatican. But they came up with this great idea that they could control people by blackmailing them. So they started this, and they were probably raping kids before that, but they really started to do it in earnest and created more victims, just made it a cultural type thing that was going on in the society. This is back in the 1500s, so yeah. And not that it's any different than Europe, I don't think. And then that just came over here when they settled here. But the infrastructure, the power structure, the royalty, everything, it just, and I'm looking for the word. It's the social structure of that country is a perfect storm for that, because it's basically the rich and the poor, and exploited, you know, they're exploited and they don't have a say, you know, and for a long time, you know, there was no, and not that it's any better now. Yeah, they have elected representatives, but supposedly a democracy, but you know, it was, you know, what the royal family said went, you know, for hundreds of years. So yeah, that's my explanation of to that question. So where are we going with this? I'm a little off. So yeah, let me get through his
back timeline, because I got off on that Duncroft school because that was one of the
it's a good point, you know, and it just keeps bringing old Joe up, you know, and others, these other politicians that you see at these you know, schools, colleges, you know, preschools. So at any rate, so we're going through, now we're getting into decades. Now we're in the 70s. Okay. And these are listed by police. Groping a 12-year-old boy and his two female friends. Groping. You know, and when people say, oh, Joe Biden, he's just, you know, like a groper, and that is sexual assault. Okay. So we see this guy that was pulling in, you know, kids into hotel rooms and raping them, was groping on the record with the police. So groping is not okay. You know, it's, that whole creepy thing. Yeah, it's creepy, but it's beyond creepy. Creepy to me is just like an excuse for the behavior. So there he goes. The 80s, at some point in the decade, a female victim was believed to have told Metropolitan Police, this is Scotland Yard, okay? Supposedly the most well-respected, one of the most kind of like the FBI, that she was assaulted in his camper van at the BBC car park. A police file cannot be located, and the investigating officer is now dead. So 10 years later, of course, and if you don't think everybody that he worked with, the upper echelons of that company, knew that was going on, and all his buddies, his royal family buddies, didn't know about that, you're crazy. So, of course, what do? They knight him in 1990. He's rewarded for his dedication to raping children in 1990. And another decade goes by, more victims, and Howie, 500, yeah, over 3 decades, 500 kids. They're nuts. It's more like 5,000 or 50,000. So Louis Theroux, and that documentary is somewhere on YouTube. Did a documentary in 2000. There was people that were investigating, like Jill Dando, and at the BBC, who in the late 90s, you know, it was common knowledge. So, made a mistake there. I'm just going to put Jill up here. So we got Louis Theroux right around late 90s, and Jill Dando, a BBC reporter, an honest reporter. Let's get a picture of her. Yeah, God. And she's doing an expose on this, and of course running into a brick wall at the BBC. And I believe good old Mark Thompson was the guy that was in charge around this time. And there's just no way. There's no way that a major news organization and a major TV guy can be doing a documentary on this, and that the administration of BBC doesn't know about it. There's just no way. So he gets knighted, and Jill Dando gets murdered. Okay, so that's what happens here. She was shot in her driveway, and just if you follow that case, it's just such a joke. They didn't want to solve it. You know, there was a couple of cops that did want to solve it, but they ended up railroading her neighbor, you know, convicting him on the basis that he had gunshot residue in a pocket of one of his jackets, you know. So that conviction was BS, and it gets overturned, and the guy gets out because he was innocent, which is a good thing. But the case is unsolved. Even and a couple of the police officers in on that case are convinced that it was a professional hit. And of course it was. Single shot to the temple.
The very fact that they took that guy to court on gunshot residue in his pocket tells you right there they did not want to have this stick. They were either looking at outright acquittal. Well, lo and behold, gets convicted. My goodness.
Well, he was in jail for like 6 years. So
well, what do you know of a prosecutor that would take a case to court on gunshot residue in their pocket? I've never heard of it.
You would think not. You would think not. But so, at any rate, obviously she knew too much. Mark Thompson was giving her flack. I'm sure Louis Theroux worked for a different company, I believe, an independent company of BBC. And I'm sure he was getting, a lot of shit. But so, yeah, she's murdered. Again, the inquiries go nowhere. Let's see. His final appearance in 2006 on Top of the Pops. Okay. Then they start making allegations again. Okay. So 2 years go by. So yeah. And maybe you can talk to about Bill Maloney now. And I can, whenever you're ready, I want to play a little bit of that video that he made down there. But so people are making allegations. They're dicking around. Another 2 years goes by. Saville sues the newspaper that linked him to the abuse at Hot de la Garenne, okay, which is the children's home in Jersey, that the remains of the children, they were burning children's bodies in that facility, in the basement, in some sort of furnace. And so you talk about Bill Maloney, Howie, and I'll get some of that video.
Well, I mean, I just came across him on YouTube, and he basically parked himself in in English Square, and just started off the cuff talking about every type of abuse in England at the highest levels, Catholic Church, what the royal family knew. I mean, he literally just had a microphone, and people just started gathering around him. And he's been doing this. He's been doing this for years. But if I looked at him and was like, people say, oh, Howard, some of the things you do. I mean, I looked at him, and it was just mind blowing. His courage and his strength. He started his organization is Pie and Mash Films, I believe.
Yep. We're subscribed to it, and I think I featured it. It's one of our featured YouTube accounts.
And his entire goal is to raise awareness, for child sex abuse, and some, like I said, some of the things he's done in public. I mean, it's very, very, very courageous, calling out the Catholic Church, calling out the Queen, and he does it with such conviction. I mean, he's an incredible advocate, and he's one of my idols. It's something that I would aspire to.
He's the English. Hey, come on, he's the English Howie. Okay, and you're just not making films yet. Okay.
No.
Wait, he is making films. What are you talking about?
Well,
they may not be very long.
It's not, yeah,
it was dark.
Okay, I guess you could call that a 4-minute documentary.
Well, I absolutely would.
Well, I think that may have got more views than some of Bill's.
Yeah.
So I think you need to just get bigger and better, Howie, and you can actually produce.
I think Bill's been at it for years, and he's incredible. He's incredibly knowledgeable, understands history, and we tend to focus we tend to focus in on, what's happening in the United States. Obviously, we have, you know, you know, starting out with Pizzagate, it wasn't, there wasn't any type of British connection, but, it still comes back to like there are things that have gone on in England, obviously longer than the United States because their history is longer, and it's just something that we really, we have to concentrate. This is a worldwide epidemic. We're trying to make it, a foothold in, just in the United States, but with liking, we need
Howard,
to like. Yes,
Howard,
Kathleen.
didn't they find one of Elefantis? Didn't they find a pizza parlor of Elefantis? Was it England?
Yeah, I mean, it was something. It was a ping pong place in Germany.
Oh, was it Germany?
Yeah, I didn't quite understand that. The researchers found that I didn't quite understand it fully, but the bottom line is, we need to start making, I think we need to start making international connections.
Well, funny you should say that, because the recent surge in your video included the United Kingdom and Germany and Australia even. So and now we got 1,000 subscribers. So you're making head. And actually, I know a lot of people on Twitter from the UK, Sunny Clarabelle being one that's just
right.
incredible.
Shiny blue dress.
I've met a few, but sometimes you don't know exactly where people are from. But after a little while, you start to gauge that, because being on Twitter, you really don't, sometimes you don't know if, male, female, whatever. But this is international, and obviously England is a strong connection. I know things are being done over there. I haven't looked into other European countries too much, but once we knock this out in the United States and England, I mean, we have to go into third world countries, and I mean, do we really, do we really have the stomach for what's going on in like India and Southeast Asia?
Or Haiti, for that matter.
Haiti, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and no, we don't have the stomach for it, because we can't. We don't even have the stomach to, protect our own children from, what's going on in USA Gymnastics. We haven't had, or the University of Michigan. But let me play a little bit of Bill's work, because people really need to get familiar with this. Also, during the marathon, I played a UK Column is a show that is really probably the only mainstream media that has consistently gotten this message out. And you know what? If they can do that in the culture of the United Kingdom, we're going to have soon, I hope, here some sort of large news organization that again can take up this cause. But let me play a little bit of and it's called Sun, Sea, and Satan. Must watch. I think it's in our must watch section. But let me play a little bit of it.
Award-winning film director Bill Maloney was shooting a documentary on the streets of New York when he first heard about the investigation of child abuse and possibly murder at the Jersey Island Children's Home, Hampton Garand. Bill was brought up in the care of the British establishment, as were the rest of his family, all of whom were abused, be it physically, psychologically, or sexually. Bill's decision to fly to Jersey on his return from New York came as no surprise to all of us here that work at Bottomless Films. In this documentary, he tries to condense a bigger picture into the smaller frame that is often shown to the public. Or as Bill puts it, sometimes simple things can expose everything.
let me emphasize again, whatever else, we have a dead child or dead children in that cellar. Now, we don't know yet how they got there. We don't know how they died, but we do know that within that cellar, there is at least one dead child and maybe more. And anybody that wants to denigrate that or to try and minimize that, then I would ask them to look at themselves. It may turn out in the end that the death happened elsewhere. It may turn out that it happened a long, long time ago. Let's hope that is indeed the case. But at this moment in time, we cannot say that. And until we do our inquiries, we can't rule it out. And as I say, I would ask everybody again who are having an attack at our victims, an attack at the credibility of this inquiry, to remember the work that our staff are doing in there, what they're finding, the evidence that they're finding, and to have the welfare of the victims at the forefront of their minds.
This is Bill Maloney speaking for Pie Match Films from the island of Jersey. I'm here investigating the allegations of torture, murder, and child sex abuse in the children's home Haute de la Goran. I've just landed, and it's incredible that the horrors that have been going on this island, it is so beautiful. It's a stunning place. It's a rich place, and I think it's a greedy place. I've already been asked by a few people that look very establishmentarian to me where I'm staying, but I won't let them know. You know, I'm fannying them, as we say in London. Now,
so I would encourage you to watch all of Bill's work. I don't know how much of that. Thought I'd put that. I was hoping that went out. I think it did, but at any rate, you know, all you have to do is go down our YouTube channel to the subscribed, or I think we featured his channel, and take a look at his work. And this was just part of the Saville legacy of filth, and you know, this was just one area, you know, and this and the bottom line is really nobody has been prosecuted for any of this in any meaningful way. So that's,
well, they're not, you know, I know as far as the Duncroft school, they whatever the word is, they basically said that the head of the school had no, you know, was not responsible in any way. You know,
yeah.
Nobody at the hospital, you know, none of the hospital administrators were responsible. You know, it's just that it's a cover up. It's a cover up. It's buried. He was already dead. 500 people. You know, horrible thing. Let's move on. But you know, in my mind, you know, they don't want to open up those doors. They don't want to tell the entire truth, because the entire truth is very, very ugly.
Yeah, I want to find out about that cop, because that was just one honest cop, and believe me, being an honest cop on that island is he must have been under incredible pressure. And I mean, they had evidence of murders. I mean, they did DNA testing on this stuff. They forensic pathologists looked at these bones, and there was tool marks on them, which indicated that they were dismembering these kids. the content of the soil of that basement was ash, and some of the remains that they found were, it was some sort of furnace, and think about that. Think about that. To have to go to that extreme, tells you the number of children that were being murdered, and that's just one children's home. And I think it was in Jersey, because of the status of Jersey, which is basically like Washington, D.C. It's not really a governed part. Well, it's governed, but it's not really like a part of the United Kingdom. There's two Channel Islands, and that also in World War II, those islands they basically just shipped all the Jewish people out. It was like England was at war, and wasn't going to do that, but these two islands just allowed the Nazis to come in there and just take people out of there wholesale. So that what a perfect area. And I don't know if you saw that, but in that particular, just that one island, and that was a while ago, was a $250 billion financial. It's basically an offshore bank for the royal family. So,
and that's getting into the more complicated side of all this. Bringing it back to the simple aspects of what Jimmy Saville did. He had, on top of being the presenter on Top of the Pops, they gave him this show called Jimmy'll Fix It, and basically it was a show to, from what I understand, to make children's dreams come true. He would travel around. He traveled around in a like a camper, like a small Winnebago type thing, and he would, would be shot on location, obviously, but he would also be raping, plucking children and raping them right inside the camper. And one of the, I think it was a reporter who was going around with him at the time. He said one time he walked in and Saville was in there sleeping with a 14-year-old, like lying next to a 14-year-old girl, or about 14. He said, they're both clothed, but he found it highly inappropriate, but at the same time, he didn't think to say anything. People had their suspicions about this guy, and he was always around kids, and these television shows between Top of the Pops where there were children on the set, and this Jimmy'll Fix It. He probably came up with that. Hey, just another way to now I can travel the country and and be around children. And going back to his days starting out at a dance hall, he just everywhere he went, he was around children everywhere he went.
Yeah. And a point that keeps coming up with me here too, and it just keeps flashing Joe Biden, but it was the same thing there, and I think, and I don't know if that's the case, with Joe Biden, but when all these people were becoming aware of what Saville was doing, it was like he got the creepy label. It's like, oh, well, he's just, he's kind of a creepy guy, he kind of, is inappropriate. And, I think that's very telling that if you're doing that sort of behavior in public where everybody knows about it, at least in Saville's case, we see what was going on behind closed doors. So,
but a lot of people said too that even if they did suspect something, who were they going to go to? Were they going to go to the BBC? No, they would. Saville would have denied it, and that would have been the end of it.
Yeah, and even when you got, when you look at what Jill Dando was doing and Louis Theroux and police, they got nowhere. I mean, they really got nowhere. And the scandal, it took till 2011 when it broke, and he died in October of that year.
Right.
He was out of there. And I'm not sure he wasn't, because the establishment knew that what he knew could have sunk that whole island. And then all of a sudden it breaks and boom, he's gone. It's like that, what's that cardinal? I can never remember his name, when they finally got around to, prosecuting him. He was out of there. Was that the Philly guy, the cardinal?
Belavacqua.
Yeah.
Belavacqua. Yeah, he was.
Well, that's also Nicole Kidman's father.
Yeah.
Sir Anthony Kidman.
Well,
Fiona
yeah,
Barnett came out about him, and then he was dead within a couple of months.
Yeah, a lot of deaths. But they were, they were ready to go with the BBC was ready to. It was a program called Newsnight in the end of 2011. And they were prepared to, expose the allegations against Jimmy Saville, finally, and it got killed at the program got killed at the last minute. And one of the women, you're talking about, Jill Dando, there was a woman working on it. Her name was Liz McCain. She ended up dying last year, 2017, age 53, and she died of a stroke. To me, anyone that dies at age 53 of a stroke, if you look her up, she looks extremely healthy to me. It just seems odd. But eventually, so the BBC killed it, and another network, ITV, picked it up and ended up running it, and that's sort of how the whole thing sort of got started, finally exposing him, after all these years. But before he got to the BBC, Saville was he was a radio DJ, and there were allegations against him, back then. They sort of got, it never went anywhere, and the BBC and anyone that when he got to television had never heard about the allegations, even going back to the when he was managing the dance hall. So, but people knew about Jimmy Saville, going back to the 60s. I mean, going back to 1960, 4 years before he started on the Top of the Pops.
Yeah, there's Liz. I put her up, and I think she kind of took up, the mantle for Jill Dando, and kept pushing this case, and yeah, then she left the BBC because, again, they would, I guess she did that documentary, and they were not, just like the Franklin scandal or Conspiracy of Silence, they were not even going to let that air. So that must have been, I wish there was.
We were talking before the show, and if you just searched Liz McCain, the first entry from Google is from Wikipedia. The second is an obituary from The Guardian. The third is from BBC.com, saying that she died of a stroke. The fourth is from the Independent.co.uk, and the fifth entry is from Snopes.
It's right up there now as you're talking about it.
Yes, the fifth entry, and I didn't search death conspiracy.
I got it as third. The third. This is the third. I got.
Comes up third for you. Okay.
Yep. Wikipedia, the obituary, and then Snopes. Like, that's not product placement.
It comes up fifth for me. But anytime I'm searching for something, because I don't see Snopes very often. But if I'm just searching for a person, why would why would Snopes be fifth? And we all know what Snopes is. And, you know, when it shows up that prominently, you know, in the search engine, it's obviously placed there for a reason. And of course, fact check by Snopes. Was there something suspicious about her death? Snopes has declared that false. They've done a thorough investigation into the death of Liz McCain, and Snopes is 100% certain that it's false. So we don't need to go on about that. It speaks for itself.
Yeah,
but
I'm reading their joke of an article right now.
Yeah,
yeah, and of course, you know, they don't mention that not too many 52-year-old healthy people die of massive strokes, but you know, that's not.
I would like to know that number. I would like to know that number.
Well, you could American Heart Association website. I used to do that for a living, Howie. I don't think I ever had a 52-year-old. You know, we had, you know, some aneurysms, things like that. But
I mean, she's, you know, obviously, you know, we get into all the risk factors, but she's obviously not obese or anything like that. I mean, you know,
Jack's chiding us for using Google. Sorry, Jack. Jack's in the chat room.
That's funny. Hi, Jack.
Well, it's the point that, you know, whether you use it or not, I mean, most people do, and Snopes is right there to let you know that, hey, nothing funny happened here. Nothing funny. We're the.
Well, let me just take him up on that, because I've got DuckDuckGo on my iPad. Let me see what comes up with.
Well, I'm sure.
Just for a little experiment, you know. Why not?
I'm sure Snopes isn't going to come up on DuckDuckGo.
Let's see. So at any rate, you know, the investigation, the culture at BBC has done, and I'm going to get into a little bit of that, because that timeline is just a great article. It goes through where Mark Thompson is being notified of this, doing nothing, and then all of a sudden, boom, he goes to the New York Times. You know, so. But yeah, we'll get into that. And you know, that would be right up your what? Oh yeah, I have to. I'm bandwidth poor. Hold on for a minute. Let's see here. But yeah, that would be up your alley, Howie. It's in New York. It's you know, I think you should go after Mark Thompson, if you know, when you're not busy.
Oh, I know where the New York Times building is. So, and it's a nice, you know, it's a nice open glass building. So if I need to, but
it's a fine looking building, Howard. It's a fine looking building. You should go visit.
You get lost in the crowd there. It's very close to Times Square. So
well, Snopes comes up 9th on DuckDuckGo.
Okay.
Just, you happy? You happy, Jack? But
pushing hard. They're pushing hard. So if, you know, like I said, if Snopes shows up, that's a signal to me.
Yeah,
it is, no doubt.
You know.
So someone called Box in Tenebris in the chat said that Saville wasn't alone. Jonathan King, another DJ.
Yes.
You heard of him?
Yes. Yeah.
Jonathan King.
Yep, him and his buddy. They were up
you
there.
know him. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was more people. I mean, this asshole was hanging out with, you know, the royal family. You think this never came up? You know, what do these people do? Okay, they do their whatever their public thing is, and the rest of the time they're involved in eating and drinking or using drugs and pursuit of whatever sick pleasure they can come up with. That's all they have to do. I mean, they don't have real jobs. So what do you know, if he's hanging out with Prince Charles, you know, what do you think they're doing? You think they go out and they do a personal appearance and then they go and play checkers for 8 hours, you know?
One of the things that I was thinking about earlier is that Saville was a huge um, he made a lot of financial contributions to these hospitals and children's institutions and everything, and it was not small amounts of money. It was large amounts of money.
Yeah.
So I
Worth
mean,
40 million pounds worth. Well,
oh well,
he raised
yeah.
he
See,
raised he
Yeah, it
raised
wasn't his money. Wasn't his money.
Yeah.
I maybe it'd be some, but you know that yeah, he was raising money for them, but it's the same thing. I mean, money and power by access.
and that's how he had access to those hospitals.
right.
Yeah, and if you can just imagine that, just imagine the terror of those children on that ward when they know, okay, everybody's going home at night, and they've got this scumbag that's in his little room, you know, until the doctors aren't there, you know, and I'm sure that's when most of these rapes occurred. And imagine the terror of those children in a hospital, for God's sake, you know, at the mercy of, you know, that's a facility that's supposed to be protecting them, and that's what they had coming down the hall every night.
Amazing.
Well, Jimmy Savile is probably one of the creepiest looking people that I've ever seen in my entire life. That's, you know, what
I won't I won't argue that one, you know. And where God, and I would hope that you know, some of these parents realized this and just kept their kid. And I'm sure there were. I'm sure there were some parents that weren't fooled by the, you know, the exterior, the fame, or you know, you know, the Biden factor, you know, and you know, kept their kids away from this guy and probably saved their lives, you know. And that's another thing with these, oh God, you know, they're preying on a lot of different children, but the children that get the brunt of it are the children that are poor and disabled in this case, and just totally have no way of defending themselves. And that those are the ones, and that society doesn't even give a shit about. I mean, how many kids did they murder at that one facility in Jersey? And nobody even gave a shit. Nobody came and raised hell. Nobody did it. You know, it's like the CPS racket in our country. You know, a lot of these kids have nobody that even cares. You know, they're shipped out. They're shipped here, foster home, rape, traffic, and there's no adult or family that even raises questions. You know, and that,
well, honestly, my impression wasn't that they all came from that place, because there has been a lot of shipping in and out of that island, you know, trafficking that they've talked about. So I figured that played into it as well. Not everybody, you know, was from that facility. I mean, that's just my own speculation, but
you know, there's and I think Vox is from there with her knowledge of this, but she's mentioning that, and that's the UK column, and search the UK column, and we're getting a lot of their videos over onto our channel where they'll be, but that's the show that has outed all this. And what she was, UK column has shown footage of Tom Fortescue, Tory whip, who openly admits that whips could make problems with little boys go away for a favor. So yeah, the culture of corruption, which is really no different than here, and but I would think it's a little bit worse, and I think that's, you know, I think that's why is it just hasn't been going on here as long as it has there.
But I want to try and like switch this around a little bit, and you know, maybe turn some of this into a positive. Obviously not what happened to a positive, but how it can be positive for us when we're talking about trying to wake people up to the realization of what is happening to children, whether it's in this country or around the world. here you have an example. Everyone needs to educate themselves as much as possible on the Jimmy Savile case, because I would say, if I had off the top of my head, less than 5% of Americans ever even heard of Jimmy Savile. They don't know who he is. So if you use that case, yes, it's not the United States, but here's an extremely famous person. Everybody knows the royal family, and everybody knows, British musicians. So you say, if it happened in the UK and it's not conspiracy, then why couldn't it happen here? And it's, and it's not, and happened, wasn't like an isolated incident, happened over, decades. So Jimmy Savile case, is something that you can really catch people's attention. Say, hey, just look up this guy and look what he did, and his fame and his popularity. I mean,
just that one article. I mean, my God, the first paragraph of that one article. And this is not conjecture. It's not,
So if you ever want to know like how to, get on the topic, I mean, you'd be like, and people don't want to believe, you'd say, hey, are you familiar with Jimmy Savile? The case of Jimmy Savile. So I think it's an important piece that everybody, needs to have in their arsenal, when they're talking about, child sex abuse, reaching the highest levels of, of society, the elites. And here's somebody, he may not necessarily been an elite, or maybe was, but he definitely knew them all.
Yeah. And there, that I don't I don't put those links in the show description for fun. You can tweet those out. You can put them on Facebook. They blow up into these nice big articles that people will actually look at. And boy, that's a great one. It's in there, and it's got the timeline. It's got everything that he did. It goes through the Mark Thompson stuff, and I'm going to talk about Mark a little bit before. But yeah, go ahead. We'll just maybe save that for the end, because I look at that in a positive light, because he's still alive. We can still make him pay, and that's kind of where I'm going to go with that. But yeah, and I totally agree with you, Howie. We need
on it.
I'm
on it.
Oh, Mark.
Yeah, I'm on it.
I'd love to see you hound that son of a bitch. Just chase him down.
He's got to go to lunch, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I might have to come up there and chase him with you. We'll box him in. We'll do the old it's some kind of FBI technique they used to do when they were following somebody. I can't remember the name of it, but hell, no, I better shut up. But yeah, so let me just cover a little bit of that. But you're absolutely right, and we need to take, as horrible as this stuff is, you need to take something good away from this, and that's about the only good thing, that it's information that's easily understood, it's easy to get to, and it's easy to share. And what better way to and the link, the link that this guy is now in this country. It's like, oh, well, that could only happen in England. Well, the New York Times is run by a guy that was aiding and abetting this. So what do you think he's doing in the New York Times? Do you think he, turned over a new leaf? No. So let me, because I just want to, it goes through the end of this article where it's fact that he knew. And not only that they did a government independent inquiry of the whole BBC affair. And the independent inquiry concluded that not only did he know, he lied about what he knew was going on with Savile. So let me.
Wow.
Let's see here. Oh, damn! Snopes page crashed. What a shame. Haha. All right, so back to the timeline. Let's see here. And thank you, people. Just while we're talking about it, we just had somebody else subscribe. We get those notifications, and I think we must be over. There's another one, so we must be over 1,000. And thank you, everybody that's been involved in doing that. And it's going to help get this message out. So as soon as I figure out how to use those tools you get when you have 1,000 subscribers, you'll see the results in our videos, and hopefully the reach of our videos. And that might be another little explosion for your video, Howie, because that's what did I say? That was 17,000. It's averaging 14,000 views every 48 hours. So I'm good. I'd love to see that. We had periods that it was averaging 40,000 views in 48 hours. I think that was the peak. But
well, if you would have told me that it would have 115,000 views, I never would have believed it. So I mean, yeah, I'm incredibly grateful and humbled by that. So, but
here's the end of this timeline. And okay, so Saville, the story breaks, he dies. All right. So the Sunday Mirror reports in January of 2012 that the Newsnight investigation, and that was what was being done by Liz McKean, was axed, and refers to a clash with the Fix It tribute show. They didn't want the investigation to interfere with a tribute they were doing on this asshole.
Yeah.
Gee,
yes.
you think, that would have given me a stroke right there, And I'm sure the stress of this, if Liz had any underlying medical problems, it probably led to her death if she wasn't, the victim of some other malfeasance. So
they just let's emphasize that the BBC Newsnight program was about to expose Jimmy Saville with probably dozens of allegations of child rape, and they scrapped that in lieu of a tribute to his life and 40 years on the BBC.
Yep. So right here, February 9th, Miles Goslett reports in the oldie that Newsnight Saville investigation was pulled because of the tribute programs and that allegations were made about abuse on BBC premises. The article alleges, and it was never sued or retracted, that the BBC had information the police did not have, and Mark Thompson knew of the report. Okay, so and later on, I'll just switch to this for a minute because you can see this. The Pollard Review, they did an independent review of this in 2013, and you can read the entire transcript of the Pollard tape, and it was their conclusion that Mark Thompson, the chief executive officer of the New York Times, lied to protect a pedophile. Well, that's a crime. Okay. So people, I would call the New York Times switchboard and let them know how you feel about that. And I think we're gonna have something for Mr. Thompson in the near future. But yeah, all these links are in there. You can read them. I want to read that whole report, and it's like I'm not sure when I'll.
So do I.
But yeah, we'll. You know what I can do for Catherine right now? I can put that, I think, right into our. Well, at any rate, you can DuckDuckGo. Well, let me try to just send this to you in the. Oh, okay, that's the way it's gonna go. Okay. All right. It's making it difficult. Let's see. All right. Trying to send it to you right in Google here. But yeah, so you've got supposedly the premier newspaper in the entire world, the New York Times, that's being run by at least somebody who has criminally obstructed an investigation of a serial child rapist and probably murderer of children. So
right.
I don't know. Let's see. No. Oh, there's the chat. There you go, Catherine. Here it comes. Paste. boom, there's the link to that if you want it. So, and all those links. Oh, Pam's in the house. Pamela Olson, the founder of Save Our Children, California. Hi, Pam. How you doing? Welcome. Huge stumps daily on the elite pedos and their support networks. Mind blowing. You know, names like Hugh says, not one of them will be able to walk down the street. Well, let's do it. Ad block. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I need to do with my browser. I'm not sure when it's going to get done, but there was a wonderful.
Hey, Jack is very tech savvy. That guy.
Yeah, I know. I'm tech neutral, tech negative at best. But there's a wonderful one of our subscribers has emailed us already. She's apparently has a lot of knowledge, and I'm going to let her help me with. I guess it's security for our platform and our stuff. So, you know, we're a crowdsource. You know, there's a lot of cool things going on.
Wow, very nice.
And that was one of them. So, do we have any? I think we've covered Jimmy pretty well, other than to urge people to share all the information. And it's you don't have to go far. It's in the show notes. The stuff that's just in the show notes and that's just on the channel can be tweeted, Facebooked, etc., 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 and it should be.
And there's plenty of documentaries. So you know, they're about hour and a half long. They go by very quick. It's a lot of information. You know, to remember all the dates and the players, but you know, like I said, if you're gonna you know, try and wake people up to the realization of what is going on, I think it's one of the most important cases. You know, and to do that, you know, we're a little bit behind a little bit behind the 8 ball because people don't know who Jimmy Saville is. But if you can just, you know, if you can make some type of analogy of, you know, of how famous this guy was, you know, and you can start, you know, and say like, well, he was knighted by the Queen, so that should say something. And you know,
how about the Gary Glitter connection? Howie, you wanted to?
Well, yeah, I mean, I knew about this guy Gary Glitter, and it goes back, but one of the girls from what is it, Duncroft School? She said that because they brought, you know, Jimmy was, you know, abusing the girls at the school, you know, off of school grounds with promises of going to the top of the pops, and she said, you know, they walked back to a dressing room where Gary Glitter was raping a girl. Jimmy Saville was in the dressing room. It was in the dressing room laughing while this was going on, and now a woman, you know, witnessed this. So, you know, Gary Glitter is a convicted pedophile. He's in prison. You know, and you know, it's part of that ring that Gary Glitter and, you know, and I don't know how many others were involved in it, but there's a definite connection between Jimmy Saville and an eyewitness to Gary Glitter raping a child, you know, on the set of Top of the Pops with Jimmy Saville in the room. So,
well, hopefully we're taking this culture apart one piece at a time. Backpage.com is no more. If I'm digging down into that, and we might have to have a show on that just to show how pervasive that this is and how far reaching just that one website. And that's just on the white web. Okay. that's one company.
Good point.
On the in your face, and I think of 97 countries. And I tweeted out you can read the federal indictment and positive. We're going on positive now, right? I tweeted out it was a sealed indictment. one of those 20,000 where Kathy's not in there. Every time I think sealed indictments, I think Kathy McCauley, but it was unsealed, and just read it. There's a page in there. It's page 31. I read the whole thing because it's just unbelievable. But it shows exactly how they were doing this and how the pimps in these networks were using that to pimp out these kids, and the company knew about it, and the executives knew about it, and they were designing it so that this could be done, and that if they got flagged, by some of their BS, security or whatever, that they could get around that. And this is these, big wigs in the corporate world that were designed and operated the advertising for a pedophile network. So read the indictment, and that indictment was sealed, and hopefully that's the first of many. I hope there's one coming for Craig. If they knew, if Craigslist didn't know, then fine. But I think the most important part of this is that people are starting to go to jail that knew about this. No, they didn't pick the kid up and deliver them to their victimizer, but you know what? They aided and abetted those crimes, and those people I don't think they're going to see the light of day again, and that's good, and hopefully that's the first domino in a huge chain. So I love Vox is amazing in our chat room. Thank you. Everybody's amazing in there. Desiree, Pam, everybody, thank you for your input. But and that's what we need. And I'll just direct you guys, because there's all this knowledge there, and so you're bringing that along into this forum, and we thank you for that. But get it over on Twitter if you can. Get to our Facebook page. We have a crowdsource page on the Traffic Report Show on Facebook, and all that knowledge you have is that's another part of getting this out. So it's pretty cool that it's coming to us, which is kind of what we hoped for, because we get a little overwhelmed at times. I know I do.
Well, there's definitely good positive progress being made. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Everybody is encouraged by the best that they see, and there are pretty good sized ones pretty much every day anymore. And I mean, honestly, a lot of things could have happened and not happened, but it just so happened that Biden ended up in close proximity to Howard so he could go visit him. And, now there's 113,000 people that have seen this video and climbing, and it makes a difference. It's a good thing. That is a really good thing, especially Biden.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I mean. And I don't know. I rely on my intuition a lot. And I just what keeps clicking for me is Biden and Saville. Just that behavior. It's like, let's see, I'm trying to get the latest view count. It would be nice here. Hold on for a second.
Guys, I have to jump off a little early.
All right, Howie. Yeah, we're about ready to. I think we're all saddled out.
Okay, just want to say goodbye, and thanks for everyone for watching, and yeah, we'll talk soon.
Okay, before you go, drum roll, please. 100,000, 116,004. So let's keep that moving.
Absolutely mind-boggling.
Keep it going, Howie. We will.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, we will. All right, man. Have a great night, everyone.
Night, Howard.
Comes the word. Good
Bye,
night.
Catherine.
So I think we gave Jimmy a pretty good beating, but what I want to see, and you know, this is what this is about, you know, what Howie's doing, getting out there, confronting, you know, these monsters. And, you know, that's what I want people to do with this information. We have a guy that goes to work every day at the New York Times. We've got people that live in New York. You know, we've got angry parents of, you know, survivors of this culture of abuse. Make them hear about it. Let them hear about it at every opportunity. Take this information it's in the show notes, information that you have, all the people that are in our chat room, you know, right now, and I'm sure they will. And everybody's doing that. And you know, the information that get it out there. We have to be relentless, you know. And
well, you know what Howard was saying about the UK survivors joining together with people in the US. I've talked with them about that very thing for years, because like Sunny Clarabelle and Shiny Blue Dress, those guys, we've all had Twitter accounts since the beginning of Twitter, and we've all followed each other, you know, all these years. And so I've encouraged them to reach out, connect with people. Like, there are organizations in the United States that are good organizations, and they actually do something. And, you know, connect with those people. And
oops, oopsie. You're so cute.
Anyway, just to connect with those people, to support them, because they really need help. And when you were talking about, you know, is the UK worse than the United States? I think the UK is worse, because UK CPS is dirt, absolute dirt. If you Google Kincora 1400, you'll find where the Child Protective Services admits to as many as 1,400, but they think that's a conservative estimate of children that reported child sexual abuse, and they turned them away. They called them liars, they called them talebearers, and turned them away because it was a ring, and it was a ring of Turkish guys, and they did not want to seem racist. I give you my word, that is exactly what the CPS people said. And I was so furious when they said that. I'm like, you know what? On this point, I wish you would have lied. Oh my, I was so mad. Well, we didn't want to appear to be racist.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
1,400 kids over a few years' time, you know, you're on your own. And they were setting those children on fire. They were pimping them out. They were really brutal.
Well, that's all going to change, and you know, political correctness is not going to save these people. There's a new case in Kansas, and I can't even get into it right now, or I won't sleep. But this show got going because of Adrian, and same organization, same story, and it just happened, just broke. So, you know, we've got work to do everywhere, you know. So we'll take on that at our next opportunity. But we've got a lot of work to do. Let's just put it that way.
Some days are harder than other days. You know, this was a hard day for me. You were saying it was a hard day for you. You know, it was just kind of going around, and I think it. You know, I was dragging tonight for sure.
Yeah.
So thanks for everybody for hanging in there with us tonight and such.
Great group in the chat room. So we'll be back next Wednesday. I'm going to play you out with, listen to that, and please share this video, share Bill's work, Bill Maloney, and just listen to that cop, you know, one honest cop in Jersey that was attempting to do his job, you know, and, you know, get that out there. call the New York Times tomorrow. Let's give Mark Thompson, tweet at him, tweet at all the reporters. These great Maggie Haberman, great reporter for the New York Times. You work for a guy that is complicit in covering up a pedophile and pedophile crimes. So you need to address that, great reporter, Maggie Haberman.
Well, one thing about Saville is that there was more than just raping children and abusing them everywhere that he went, because they do think that he murdered them. And so how much did that New York Times guy know?
Well, he knew it all.
I think
he knew more than the police. It's right in that. Yeah, I'm going to read that whole the independent report that they did on the BBC, because I'm sure it spells it out pretty clear. And the guy said he knew, and then he lied about it. He lied about knowing. So that's a crime. So
there's probably some pretty good memes in that article, I bet. And yeah. I've
got some really great pictures of Mark Thompson that I'll be tweeting out this week and tweeting right at them. Tweet right at them. What's the story? Aiding and abetting a crime involving a serial violent pedophile. That's who you work for, Maggie Haberman. So thank you, Catherine. Awesome. I couldn't do this without you guys, without the people that are in that chat room, and without my wild Irish rose, a couple of doors down there.
Mm-hmm. That's our love, Kelly.
So thanks, everybody. Keep it going. Keep this ball rolling. Keep Howie's video pounding, and we'll see you next Wednesday. We always pop up. We seem to pop up between Wednesday and Wednesday with this or that. So anything breaks, and
do what you can where you are for the cause. Make a phone call, ask a question, ask a cop. What do y'all do about this stuff?
Talk to a neighbor.
Are you proactive? Is this a proactive police force, or is this a reactive?
Yeah,
pretty much reactive. But
all right, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. And we'll just listen to this one honest cop, on the island of Jersey, and we'll see you next week or in between. So thanks.
All right. Good night.
Okay, good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Or as Bill puts it, sometimes simple things can expose everything.
Let me emphasize again, whatever else, we have a dead child or dead children in that cellar. Now, we don't know yet how they got there. We don't know how they died, but we do know that within that cellar, there is at least one dead child and maybe more. And anybody that wants to denigrate that or to try and minimize that, then I would ask them to look at themselves. It may turn out in the end that the death happened elsewhere. It may turn out that it happened a long, long time ago. Let's hope that is indeed the case. But at this moment in time, we cannot say that. And until we do our inquiries, we can't rule it out. And as I say, I would ask everybody again who are having an attack at our victims and attack at the credibility of this inquiry to remember the work that our staff are doing in there, what they're finding, the evidence that they're finding, and to have the welfare of the victims at the forefront of their minds.
Good advice. Keep the welfare of the victims at the forefront of our minds. And with that, we'll say good night. Good night.